Greetings from Cleveland Public Schools and Superintendent Bosshart. I wanted to send out a message to all our Cleveland residents in regards to our budget, maybe some concerns about what's happening at the national level, concerns at the state level, and how it's all impacting at the local level. I also want to share with the residents information about what we've been doing currently with our budget and trying to save some money, being financially responsible for our taxpayers, and some of the reductions that will be coming for this 2025 and 26 school year. The video I'm about to show you is kind of a breakdown of funding and how it works in the state of Minnesota and in our school system. It's a very basic breakdown, but it gives you an idea of, of how this works in our state.
After headlines across Minnesota declared record school funding in 2023, you may be asking yourself, why are so many school districts making budget cuts and going to voters for more funding? Here are the top reasons Minnesota schools are struggling to balance budgets. Number 1, inflation. Families aren't the only ones feeling the impact of rising costs. For school districts, the costs of labor, health insurance, property insurance, and school bus transportation continue to rise. The 2023 inflationary increase to the general education formula is a step forward, but it doesn't make up for decades of underfunding and failing to keep up with rising inflationary costs. Number 2, unfunded and underfunded mandates from the state. When it comes to some of the most costly things schools have to pay for, it's the state legislature, not the local school board, who makes these decisions. From implementing new instructional strategies to increasing curricular requirements to providing unemployment benefits, there are decisions made at the state level that local districts must follow. While the state may offer one-time funds to help pay for some new requirements, the ongoing costs are often the school district's responsibility. And number 3, the changing role of schools in our communities. The needs of students are different than they were 10, 20, or 30 plus years ago. From mental health support for students, specialized learning assistance, family resources, and career programs to help meet workforce needs, schools have taken on additional responsibilities to meet the needs of their students and community. When you add rising safety needs, aging buildings and technology, and declining birth rates, it's clear why Minnesota districts struggle to balance their budgets. School funding is complex, with the majority of funding coming through the state in the form of general education aid. Schools also receive funds for specific categories that can only be spent on certain items. Additional needs are then covered by property taxes. In other words, just because the state is providing us with more dollars doesn't mean we can use those dollars wherever we like. Each year, we tackle the challenge of balancing these funding sources with our increasing expenses to build an effective budget that meets student needs. When our student needs exceed state and local funding, we may seek additional support through a referendum. As you can see, there's more to the story beyond headlines of schools receiving record funding, inflation, unfunded mandates, and a changing role for schools. Funding schools is an investment in our students, community, and future. Please reach out to your elected officials and share your story so they can help do their part to make sure our students and our schools are receiving the resources they need for success. Visit our website to learn more.
I hope that simple video allowed you a little more insight on school budgets and financing from the state level. I would highly encourage you to reach out to our state legislatures and have conversations with them about continuing to support um, funding of local schools so it doesn't necessarily always have to fall on the local taxpayers.
After headlines across
Let's talk about some federal level concerns that we might have and that we're not, unsure of. So the Federal Department of Education and President Trump, as you know, there is a tug of war going on at the national level. President Trump would like to get rid of the Department of Education and distribute those powers and responsibilities throughout the other departments. What does this all mean? Well, first off, let's talk about what President Trump does not have the power to do. He does not have the power to end the Department of Education, and he does not have the power to end federal education funding. Those are all set in place by congressional language. So if he wants to get rid of the Department of Education and end federal education funding, it has to go through Congress and be approved by Congress. Trump has also threatened to withhold money if we do not comply with his DEI programs. MDE received a letter this week to verify assurance and compliance to Title IX. What does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that funding will be withheld. What it does mean is we have to assure the Department of Education that we are compliant with Title IX legislation. As of now, most schools in the state of Minnesota are compliant with state law and federal law. President Trump may disagree with that, and I would imagine eventually that disagreement will end up in our court system and be decided. What does the Department of Ed do for us locally? The Federal Department of Ed provides the district with about 10% of our funding. This funding is mainly through food, special education services, Title I services, and other support services. For Cleveland, it equates to about $1 million, give or take. This money is given mainly to the state, who in turn distributes it to the schools based on federal and state guidelines. Very little money is received from our local or directly from the federal government to our local districts. Should we be concerned locally about what's happening at the federal level? I would say yes, we should be concerned. But on a limited basis, we should be concerned due to the unknown outcomes of what Congress will do with the Department of Education. Duties can still be carried out without the Department of Education. For example, the Treasury Department would take over distributing the money. The concern that I would have would be how long and how much red tape happens with less people doing more work. We all know that when you're dealing with entities such as the government or bigger institutions, that there's a lot of red tape to go through, and their time and what our needs are don't always align. If MDE is deemed non-compliant, we could potentially lose federal funding. We should also be concerned about the impact tariffs have on our purchases. We have already been contacted by several companies we do business with the warning of substantial increases in the products that we buy due to the new tariffs that are out there. How about state level concerns? I think all of us are aware that the state budget forecast is very bleak. If we go back to 2023-24, we had a $17.5 billion surplus. We were sitting very good. That was the time when everyone was saying that schools were given the most amount of money in the history of education. This was probably true. Unfortunately, much of that money was already ate up by the 300 plus mandates that were instituted that year too. The 26-27 forecast came out with a surplus of $456 million. That is where we're sitting at right now, and this week you saw the budget targets of both the House, Senate, and the governor, and education was a target to be reduced. From what I have seen, a lot of those reductions will have minimal impact on our school district, but potentially could expand in the final bill. They're talking about special ed transportation, charter schools, and so forth. The special ed transportation would be affecting our district and would be a hit. Furthermore, the 2028-29 anticipated a $6 billion deficit. If you think and add that to what we had in 2023-24, that's a $23.5 billion swing. What happened? Well, I think all of you see it at home in your households. Everything that occurs in your household as far as bills occur here at the school and at the state level. Inflation's played a big role in it. The valuations of our homes going up dramatically has impacted things. And quite frankly, probably some wasteful spending at the state levels. Where the rest of it went, that's anybody's guess. So the 25-26 school year funding, the only thing that has been set as of now, and most of it is yet to be determined, is we have a 2.74 increase in the funding formula. This equates to about $200 per pupil increase, and based on, say, 630 students, that would bring in $126,000 of increased money from the state. This is a basic formula aid we will receive per pupil. There is now talk of a bill reducing that promised amount. That 2.74 is based on the cost of living and inflation index. That is supposed to be given to the schools automatically, anywhere from up to 3%. But they are talking about changing that so that amount could be reduced. So our current situation here locally, as you can recall, in 2022-23, 23-24 school years, the district deficit spent over $600,000. In the 24-25 school year, the final budget that was approved only allowed for about a $60,000 cushion. $60,000 is not very much in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about school budgets and finance. We've been working very diligently and hard to keep that cushion there, but just as in your households, things that are unexpected rise. For instance, we had our school floor scrubber, break down and needing to be replaced. That was unexpected. We didn't budget for that, and that was approximately $15,000 to replace. So now you're down to a $45,000 cushion. Things like that occur constantly in a building that has over 600 kids going through it and is pretty much open to the public much of the day. The reality of the 2.74 increase and the $126,000 of new money is 15% of that new money is going straight to unemployment. Another 20% of that money will have to go straight to the Family Paid Leave Act. This leaves us with about 65% or $130 per pupil for a total of $81,900 of new money. These aren't exact numbers, but they're in the ballpark of what we have to deal with. So in reality, we don't get the full amount coming out of the gate. We know that a portion of that is already ate up and used elsewhere. Some even more reality that we have to face. As you saw in the earlier video, state funding is not keeping up with inflation, and special ed is not being fully funded. If you add those two costs together, $800,000 difference in the inflation versus what we receive, and $500,000 that we have to backfill from our general fund to pay for special ed services, That equates to $1.3 million each year that we are shorted by our state and federal government. Other unknown issues that still exist out there. We don't know the cost of unemployment insurance yet. We don't know the cost of paid family medical leave. We do know that it's going to be probably about 15% of the new money being ate up. We don't know what's going to happen with the newly instituted READ Act. We have money to cover for training of our staff this year, but they are making it mandatory that we have a trainer on site, and every staff member that we hire, whether it's out of college, out of state, anyone that's not certified with the READ Act will have to be trained. But they don't give us any money at this point to do that. So if we're mandated to do that, we have to come up with an individual to do the training. We have to pay that individual to train, and we have to pay the individuals that are coming in that need the training. Another area of concern is compensatory aid. That's kind of a complicated formula that they use, but realistically, it's the money we get based on our free and reduced lunch numbers. Right? If nothing has changed in that, we will lose $68,000 in the 25-26 school year. Governor Walz has proposed, and there are some other bills out there proposing to hold schools harmless in this, which would recoup that $68,000, but nothing is finalized. So right now, we are short $68,000 in compensatory aid compared to last year, and if you subtract that from the new money of $81,000 that we'll get, we have $13,000 of new money that can be used. We're not sure about the free breakfast and lunch programs, how they will be continued to be funded. You saw at the national level that Food to Farm program was cut, which is a substantial amount. So we're unsure if the school districts will be expected to pick up that cost, as it was promised that that would not happen, but we are also in a financial crisis at all levels. We don't know the federal funding. That's uncertain. And of course, we've already talked about other unfunded mandates that we have to deal with. We have been diligently looking at our savings and programs and how we can reduce cost. And up to this point, and there's probably other areas that are not listed here, but these are some of the areas that we've been able to save some money in. We discontinued the county nurse coming in for preschool screening. We were paying about $900 for that to occur. We did not sign the contract again this year, and we did that within our house. We had a staff resignation this year during the school year, which we had to carry his salary or her salary the entire year and budget for it. So that saved us about $82,000. During the fall, I sat down with Mankato Loyola's administration athletic director, and we worked out a better suited co-op agreement. In the past, the agreement was that Cleveland would pay all transportation costs, which last year amounted for about $13,000 in cross country, and Mankato Loyola would pick up all coaching salaries and meet entries, which cost about $9,000. It was not equitable on either side. So we worked out a plan to go by a per pupil, per participant formula. By doing that, we saved $7,300 in our cross-country program. We also held our cross-country runners here on Wednesdays and held practices for them here instead of busing them over to Loyola. That alone saved us $2,200. We did a similar thing in the winter with our girls program. Traditionally, they had junior high if we were playing Truman, Junior high would go down there, the varsity JV would come up here. We condensed that and combined the sites, and so all the programs were going one direction on one bus, and that saved us a little over $2,400. Our transportation savings at the start of the year, I asked our transportation director to take a look at cluster stops and how we can do it instead of going door to door. You can see in Route 1, 5, 6, and 9, we saved substantially by creating those cluster stops. We've decided not to purchase textbooks anymore. With the internet and a lot of free resources, things out there, and teachers basically creating their own curriculum, we did not need textbooks anymore, so we saved about $20,000 by not buying the textbooks and our staff creating their own curriculum online. So overall, and this isn't the entire number, but we saved about $176,000 within the school year by doing those adjustments. What brings us to our next topic is the reductions for 2025-26. At the March school board meeting, the school board approved these cuts for a total of $406,122.14. We saved by reducing 3 teaching positions, about $232,000. We had a district office realignment where we reduced the office by one individual. That saved us about $72,000. We switched our former director of building and grounds, and a new individual came into that spot, and we did a couple other realignments which saved us about $13,000. And the big saving was in our speech language pathologist position, we were doing it with a part-time person in-house and part-time online, and we were able to secure a full-time in-house individual to take that on, and that saves us about $87,000. So our total reductions for the upcoming school year, it sits at $406,122.14. We are continually looking at other areas that we can reduce, but overall, I think the district is doing their due diligence to be more financially responsible to our taxpayers. So this concludes the presentation. If any of you have any questions, feel free to stop in. My door is always open. You can call, but I really prefer face-to-face conversations. So feel free to stop up at any time, and know that the district is planning on going out for an operating levy. We currently have a survey that has been distributed, and I believe the closing date for that survey is today, April 4th. Once that information, that survey is compiled, we will make a determination as to how to proceed with our next steps with an operating levy. Thank you, and I wish all of you a fantastic weekend.